What's up, 7th grade? Mr. Agnos here. This video is for 5-1. In the previous unit, we did a lot of adding and subtracting with positive and negative numbers. Now we're going to look at multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. And there's really sort of two rules that are going to help us keep straight. Hey, is my result what we call my product if we're multiplying, or my quotient if we're dividing? Is my answer, how about that? Is my answer going to be positive or my answer going to be negative? And really we have four possibilities. The easiest possibility, and this is what you learn in kindergarten and first grade, is that we are multiplying or dividing a positive times a positive. Okay, that's possibility number one. The second possibility is that we are multiplying or dividing a negative by a negative. Third possibility is we're multiplying or dividing a positive by a negative. And the fourth possibility is negative times a positive. So we're going to look at each one of these and just come up with a couple of rules here. All right, positive times a positive, right? This is like 4 times 2, right? This is something you learn in first grade. This is 8, right? So we know that anytime we multiply a positive times a positive, our answer is going to be positive. Okay, so this one's good to go. All right, negative times a negative. So this time I have a negative 4 times negative 2. All right, if we have a negative times a negative, and the reason I have parentheses here is because we don't like to have an operator right next to another symbol. So we just put parentheses there to clean things up a little bit. Negative 4 times negative 2, this is also positive. And I've watched a bunch of videos that try and explain like the logic of this. And, you know, if you have a negative number of something a negative number of times, that ends up being positive. And I just find those really confusing. So I just want to boil it down like this. If they have the same sign, so I'm just going to write same sign. Right? Notice these first two examples, we have the same sign. And by the word sign, I mean positive or negative. If we have the same sign, we're going to get a positive answer. All right? So is it a positive times a positive, or a positive divided by a positive? Or is it a negative times a negative, or a negative divided by a negative? Either way, we're going to get a positive answer. So again, negative 4 times negative 2 is also positive 8. All right, here I have a positive times a negative. Or maybe I'll use division this time. I'll say I have negative, actually my positive's on top, so I'll just do 16 divided by 4. Negative 4. So I have a positive on top. I'm dividing by a negative. So when I have a positive divided by a negative, my answer is going to be negative. Now, this makes sense because let's reverse the process. When I say 16 divided by negative 4, that means how many times does negative 4 go into 16? In other words, what do I need to multiply negative 4 by? What do I need to multiply negative 4 by to get back to a positive 16? Well, if you look over here, I need to multiply, to get a positive number, I need to multiply negative 4 by another negative number. So it makes sense that when I divide positive 16 by negative 4, I'm going to get a negative, because I have to multiply these two numbers together to get back to my positive 16, right? So this has to be a negative 4. So in this case, when I divided a positive by a negative, it is negative. right? And we can show that by sort of doing the opposite, by reversing the process. And same thing here. I'm going to say, instead of positive 16 on the top, I'll have negative 16 divided by a positive 4, right? And if I reverse this process, right, I have to multiply 4 times negative 4, right? This is the reverse, right? Negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. Well, that means negative 4 times 4 gives me negative 16, which is the same rule here, right? The signs are different, so I get a negative. Right, and I'll actually I'll write that out. So I have 4 times a negative 4 to get back to my negative 16. All right. I know this can get confusing, all this going back and forth and stuff. So that's why I just think the easiest way to do it is to remember these 2 rules written at the top. Same sign, your answers are going to be positive, right? Different sign, your answers are going to be negative, right? So I'll even sort of just synthesize that by saying same equals positive and different equals negative. All right. So let's try, let's just do some examples here real quick. This might be something good to write down, right? If you have a notebook going, just go ahead and write same sign, positive, right? Different sign, negative. Let me pull up some examples that they have for us. Excuse me. All right, what is the product of negative 8 times 3? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write negative. I rewrite the problem. Remember, we don't write it this way anymore. And the reason we don't write it this way anymore is because we've started to use variables, and it's really easy to confuse this multiplication sign with a variable. And so we don't do that anymore. And so you're going to see negative 8 times 3 written potentially a couple different ways. They've written it using parentheses. So when you have 2 numbers next to each other like this, you might also see it written with the little dot. Okay, but you're not going to see it. You're not going to see it written like this. Most likely, right? All 3 of these are equivalent. They're all saying the same thing. I could say the tree is big, the tree is tall, the tree is large. They're all kind of saying the same thing, right? Well, math is a language too. So I'm just saying the same thing here 3 different ways, except this way it gets confusing because that looks like an X. All right, so if I think about my different rules here, I have a negative 8. Now, there's no plus here, right? There's no plus sign. When you have a number that's just written by itself and there's nothing next to it, like 3, that's a positive 3. So the signs are different. So my answer is going to be negative. So I put the negative first, and then 8 times 3 is 24. So I kind of handle it in 2 steps. What is the sign of my answer? And then what is the answer itself? All right, this is an interesting question. It says, write negative 20 as the product of a negative and positive integer at least 3 different ways. Okay. So how many different ways can I write negative 20? Right, here's negative 20. Well, I just need to think about what are the factors of 20. 1, 2, 4, 5. These are all numbers that divide evenly into 20, right? So if I want to use these numbers to multiply to get negative 20, I gotta make sure that I use some negatives, right? So, for example, I could do 1 times, well, if I do 1 times 20, I'm going to get a positive. So I could do 1 times negative 20. That would work. And then I could reverse this. I could do negative 1 times positive 20. Right? In each case, I have only a single negative, so I'm going to get 20. I could do 4 times negative 5, or negative 4 times 5. I could do negative 2 times 10, or 2 times negative 10. I think you guys see what's happening here. As long as one of these two numbers is negative, we'll always get the 20 that we need. Is that all of them? I did 1 times 20, 2 times 10. Yeah. But again, as soon as I make, if I were to do 4 times 5, right? Well, we know that that's positive 20. They're both positive. And if I was to do negative 4 times negative 5, that would be a positive 20. So for this problem, those, right, where the signs are the same, those don't work. Okay, so I think if you remember those two basic rules, signs are the same, you get a positive. Signs are different, you get a negative. Write that down. Okay, write that down at the top of your paper every time you do a math assignment. Write that down in a notebook and have that open next to you when you're doing your math assignments. And remember, it applies to multiplication and division, right? Multiplication and division. This does not apply to addition and subtraction. And separating those two often gets kids confused. Okay, hopefully this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys in class, and make sure to ask me lots of questions.